Namaskara. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this, and welcome to the very first episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. This one's been about 7 months in the making, and I'm glad to announce that the first guest on this podcast was Samantha Yeoh. Sam and I were introduced to each other as neighbors, and we've had a ton of deep conversations over a wide range of topics, which led me to ask her to be the guest on this episode, to which she graciously obliged, and for that I'll be forever grateful. We spoke about a lot of things like the role that art plays in her life, and things like nature and spirituality. And I believe I can speak for the both of us in saying that we're nowhere near being holier than thou with regards to spirituality. But then it was just something that we both have an interest in, and we just discussed about the things that we are aware with that topic. I opened the episode, funnily enough, with talk about the weather, not remembering that this episode would be going out at least a few weeks out. But anyway, I guess that's a bit of a blooper that's been left behind for y'all to enjoy. And I guess we can all relate to being awkward in some sense. We also spoke about seeking joy and embracing emotions and expressing them in some ways on this podcast, and I think that's something that we can also relate to in terms of using different channels to seek those things. So, without further ado, I present to you Samantha Yeoh on the very first episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Hey Sam, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How's the weather in California?
Oh my gosh, it's so hot. Actually, it kind of like went down a little. It's quite chilly right now.
Okay. Does it get chilly like it doesn't like during the same time as Oklahoma, like between December to February, or does it
No,
not stay that chilly?
no. I think it's more of like, like transitioning into fall kind of chilly.
Okay, gotcha,
So
gotcha. Which is not really
yeah.
that chilly compared to Oklahoma, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
No, like no, anything like that, but like
Yeah, yeah. So let's get things started. Let's kick this off. The first episode, the pilot episode of Perspective
yay.
Platoon. Yay! Let's go. So the opening question I have for you is introduce yourself to like the listeners who probably don't know you, like you would if you were to bump into a random stranger um, on the street, and make sure to mention some of your likes and dislikes along the way. Go.
Okay, all right. Well, hi. My name is Samantha. I'm from Malaysia. I have an art page. um, okay, some of my likes and dislikes. I like listening to music. I love reading. I love dancing in my living room. And some of my dislikes. Let me see. Oh my gosh, this is such a hard one because like I'm always the type of person who's like, I like this is like so
Yeah.
cute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But if
But
there's anything that you'd do less compared to the ones that you just mentioned that you probably do more of, what would that be?
okay, I got it. I hate doing laundry with a passion.
Why laundry specifically?
You have to like pick your clothes out. You have to put it like get it to the laundry room, and then you have to fold it at the end. And I hate that. I just hate that process.
It's just time consuming. It's just
Yeah,
like wish you could just wear the same clothes every day without having to wash it.
exactly. And
Yeah.
I just don't like folding it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that because I think usually I do my laundry during the weekends, but sometimes I'm like, I just want to chill. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything during the weekend. And then I leave it for Monday when I have to do it at night before going to bed so that I have clothes to wear for work. So I feel you on that. I feel you on that. So you mentioned you have an art page, and I've seen some of your art. Um, as well. And we've also painted together before. I mean, I made this random abstract thing while you and Theo did. Theo, who is one of our common friends, for those who don't know. So yeah, what would you say was your first experience with art? Like, was there something in your childhood that you did, or was there someone who inspired you to get into art? What's the origin story behind that?
Okay, so I come from a pretty like artistic family like background, I would say. Like
Mm-hmm.
since young, like my mom would like in like classwork and stuff, if we have to like paint stuff or anything, she would always like teach me how to like make things prettier. That's like me and my mom. Like she
Mm-hmm.
would teach me how to like if you color it green, you can add like yellow to make it like ooh lime green sort of. So I would say like my mom plays like a pretty big role in like getting that like artistic like fire going.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm pretty inspired by my aunts too. Like they're all super artistic. My aunt, she like owns like a ceramic like shop and
Oh,
everything.
cool.
And like since young, like I've seen her stuff. Yeah. So like since young, like I've seen her stuff. It's just like, yeah, I think that's like my main source of inspiration. Yeah.
So
As
would
far
you
as
say that you made your first painting sometime around 4 or 5, or do you remember when you made your first painting, or what it was?
I wouldn't say like painting, but just like, like doodles and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Like
Okay, fair.
like
That is art too.
yeah. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that. So yeah. Yeah. Or like I remember enjoying that a lot. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Since you mentioned doodling, have you doodled on like the tables in your classroom or the benches in your classroom? Have you ever gotten caught because of it?
no, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Because I was like,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, because in our benches too, like when I used to study in India, there'd be stories, there'd be a lot of random stuff on there. So it's interesting how people can get creative with art by doodling on the table, which is which is fun in a way, but maybe not something the school would appreciate.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Were you gonna add something?
No, I was just gonna say, and like you have like people chatting, like
Mm-hmm.
on the tables too, and you're like, I was here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the place that I work at, which is a coffee shop, I don't know if I can mention the name or not, but well, I'll say it. It's fine. This is just I work at Starbucks, and yeah, over there, like a lot of us like doodle on the register table,
Oh,
and everybody's sort of expressing their creativity on there. Um, but yeah, eventually our managers got a little pissed, and they used like alcohol to sort of rub it off and all that. But yeah, there's still signs. I think if you go up there, you can still see my name written on there or something with like a stick figure or like a cloud or so many other things. So
yeah.
I think art is a good way of sort of, I mean, art is creativity, which we all are creative in our own ways,
Mhm.
and we tend to express that in some way or the other. For some of us it's doodling, for some of us it might be painting or whatever, and for some of us it might be podcasting, who knows. So it's all just a way of, I guess, expressing what you feel. Would you say that that's how it is, like in terms of expressing your art and expressing creativity?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like through art, it's like you get to express like the parts of you that you don't get to express like on a daily basis. Like it's like that rest of like that feeling that you have in your body. You just like, okay, I need to like paint this out and just like, express it out on a piece
Mm-hmm.
of paper or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is it like some emotions are maybe best expressed through art or through creativity? Would you say that?
Absolutely.
Um, mhm.
So yeah.
Transitioning into, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, transitioning into the sort of emotions associated with art and things like that. A lot of your paintings, from what I've seen, or like your artwork, is very for the serene. I guess it seems like it gives off this calm vibe. What would you say is a source for that in terms of the way that you express your art?
Okay, because it's really funny that you say that it's serene.
Mm-hmm.
Because like when I'm painting it, it's actually like filled with like so much of like anger and like
Oh, wow.
anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because like when I'm frustrated or whatever, like I just get a piece of paper or like just like canvas or like
Wow.
cardboard for that matter, and I
Mm-hmm.
just
So you just
start
go all
painting
ham and
and it's like
express all of that
yes,
negativity.
yes, it's like all the frustration. It's just like, oh my gosh, I have to take this all out. And so yeah, it's really funny that you say that it's like serene when like
No, because it does look serene. I think a lot of people would agree, like people who know the stuff that you make. I think a lot of people would say that it does look calm in a lot of ways. Like it expresses this sense of calm.
Mhm.
Um, it's interesting that you say that it's a way for you to channel or like sort of let go of anxiety or anger. Um, well, I don't know if this is an apt question to ask, but why do you think that is? Like, do you feel like this is your best way of expressing that sort of emotion, or do you just think that you prefer to do it this way rather than doing something else, which is writing or journaling or whatever?
Okay. So I definitely do journal it
Mm-hmm.
out, but I feel like words don't like do it for me. Like I'll be trying to like describe something, but it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't come out, you know?
Yeah,
But with like colors and like I don't know, just like the brushstrokes and all that, like it all of that just like comes out, if that makes sense.
no, yeah. I mean, it does to an extent. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, and oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought.
It's all good.
uh, oh yes, because okay, so yes, it's like all the anger and anxiety. I feel like I don't show my anger a
Mm-hmm.
lot to people, especially when like talking to people. I'm always that person who's like peacemaker. I don't want to like ruffle your feathers. I want our interaction to be happy and like good and like any type of like confrontation I'm not good at. So like I feel like I bottle a lot of like my anger inside of me.
Mm.
And with that, art helps me like kind of like relieve some of that out.
Interesting, interesting. Because I think for me, like we mentioned journaling briefly, because for me, I think journaling is a way of sort of venting. Um, and I feel like that's my best way of expressing, because I feel like I'm not that artistic in terms of making art. I mean, you've probably seen it, but
No,
you know,
I feel like your art is good. Like it's actually really good.
well, I appreciate
You
you
need to give
saying
yourself.
that. Thank you. Well, but yeah, so do you see yourself? I mean, are there any moments where you paint and where you feel like the emotions are not anger and there is like a positive vibe? And if so, like how would you differentiate the two?
Yes. So it starts off with like some sort of frustration. That's like the
Mm-hmm.
main like energy that like goes. But eventually it really turns into like this really good like process of where you're just like following like whatever your intuition's telling you to do. So like you kind of just like have fun with it and it's like creative and fun and like you get to like release a lot of your stress of like your day. You just like kind of like express yourself and you feel like, oh my gosh, I wish like I was like this all of the time. Like it just taps into that part of you where you're like, this is so me. Like I wish like I moved more like this. Like if you know what I'm talking about, like
Yeah, like in terms
it's
of
like that
expressing the
sense of
emotion, you mean? Mm-hmm.
like I would be like painting and when it gets like really specific, I'll be like, oh my gosh, I wish like I was like this with people all the time. Like I feel like I could be really I don't know, like it's like, oh hi, hey, like we don't like get deep enough. Like through like painting, it really gives me like that channel. So
Mm-hmm. So you feel like your way of expressing any deep thoughts are through artistic sort of endeavors rather than conversation specifically.
yes,
Interesting. Because you mentioned how you sort of see that transition between how you start off with a lot of this negativity, for the lack of a better word, just pouring out. But then once all of that is like emptied, like once the glass of negativity is emptied, you sort of start afresh with like positive vibes,
yes,
right? Which is cool, which is interesting because I think it's hard, or Well, I mean, I think we've all done it. We all tend to bottle up emotions, and usually there's always a tipping point for that. And once that happens, it's pretty rough. Do you think that you've had such tipping points, which is why you had to paint, or do you usually sort of find yourself controlling yourself before reaching that breaking point and just sort of painting beforehand? I don't know if that question makes sense. I mean,
For like painting for like pleasure, you mean? Like inspiration hits and
kind of, but also like, because a lot of the times when we bottle things up as people, we tend to wait till the bottle starts overflowing, you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So like, do you wait for that overflow to happen, do you think? Or do you just sort of do it before it overflows, for the lack of a better way of framing that question?
No, I get it. It's like, yes, I actually do wait until it's like to the brink so that it all just like hits at once. And then I just like sort of like just like put it all out onto like a piece of canvas. Like
Right.
kind of, yeah, like something like that. Yeah. So it helps with like, it's like that gear, you know, like when you're like driving or something, you're like zooming. And then you're like,
Hmm.
I like to paint that way. I like to
Hmm.
like go and like channel all that energy and just like create, use that energy and create. So yeah.
Does one painting do it for you, or do you have to do like multiple at one sitting to sort of like let all of that out?
Sometimes it's like sometimes I'll be like creating like multiple at once, or like I'll be taking like old paintings I don't like and I'll be like repainting them over because I'm like, oh my gosh, this looks really, really bad. I need to create something new. So yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Um, has it always been that way? I mean, you briefly said that sometimes you just paint for fun. Um,
Mhm.
would you say that you paint for fun more compared to painting for a way of venting? I didn't intend for that to rhyme, but oh well.
Yes. I would say that it's 50-50. It's like the ones that I really like hit me, or of course like the ones um where like the negative emotions are more like heavier. That's when like
Hmm.
you really remember. But painting for fun, yes. Like there's this one time where like I woke up at like 2 a.m. because inspiration hit. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something with my paintbrush. And then I started like painting and all that. So that was really fun. And I do like, if I go on a, like, when I like am super inspired by like my day, like for example, like, oh, I went to this place and I was like super inspired by the vibes there. I come home and I have like this itching feeling of like, oh, okay, like I really need to create something right now. So yeah, that's kind of like how my creative process works.
Hmm. That's interesting, because I think whenever people think about painting, at least that's how I've thought about it. Usually, there's not much of emotion associated with it, at least for me. But when you do think about it, I think a lot of the times creativity is a way of channeling all those emotions within you, right? Because I think music is the same way too, right? You mentioned that you like music, and I think a lot of the times people, or musicians for that matter, um, channelize these emotions that they have through their music. Um, is there a specific type of music that you listen to while you're doing art that sort of informs your emotion?
Oh my god, this is so hard. Yes, I love like indie rock and like
Hmm.
indie pop
Hmm.
music. Yeah, I was like super inspired by like my friends like in high school with, like exchange music, and up till now like I still feel like that's the kind of music that I really really like jive in and like really relate to, and I would listen
Hmm.
to those songs. I would also listen to like new age music kind of also,
Hmm.
like the creative ones. Those
Hmm.
are really good. But yes, yeah, painting and music goes like hand in hand with me. Like I like to listen to something while I like paint. It just like helps with like the whole
Hmm.
experience.
has there, this is probably a random, like very random question. It just popped up in my head while I was listening to you talk about that connection between painting and music for you. Um, have you ever had moments where you like, for example, you said how you, like, initially your emotions are very negative and you're sort of letting those go. In that case, have you like listened to like rock metal or like some sort of aggressive stuff to like go and then transition into indie, or has it just been indie to sort of like indie rock to sort of calm you out throughout, and the painting is the only channel?
No, but I do like super like dancey music, and I would like dance it out in my room.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's another way. Like I like to like shake it off first,
Cool.
and yeah. But it doesn't always lead into art. Like it could just
Yeah.
be like, oh, that's session where I like just like dance in my room. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because I have moments where, I mean, I don't. Sometimes I probably do play music and just dance around. Sometimes I'm just singing to myself and I'm dancing around. And sometimes a track is playing in my head and I'm just dancing. And sometimes I'm like, oh wait,
Exactly.
where am I? Why am I doing this? So it's really, in a lot of ways, I think sometimes we are creative, like in terms of dancing or doing a lot of things, and we're not necessarily thinking about what is coming out. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Does that happen to you a lot when you're painting? Like, because you said you let the emotions flow the way you paint. Um,
Mhm.
do you only sort of see the final picture once you've painted, or do you see the final picture, or do you know what you're making while you start painting?
No, never ever. I always I always let it be whatever it has to be. Like if I'm inclined to use blue, I'll use blue. And
Mm-hmm.
then if I'm inclined to like, oh, do this, do that, do this, do that. Like I let like the painting show itself. And that is always like a really, really nice process. Cause I'm like always like, ooh, I wonder how this is gonna turn out. Like I wonder what this painting is gonna be about. So it's kind of like I don't know, like you're listening to someone else's story, not really yours, but
Right.
like that sounds really weird, but like it's kind of is something like that.
Yeah. So like basically, you're letting the painting take you in a certain direction, rather than you fixing a direction for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it always
Um,
leads to, yeah, to like different places.
which I think is cool. Like, I think it takes you into a different rabbit hole altogether, because I think you're giving yourself that opportunity to sort of go somewhere. Because, I mean, I personally see that parallel with journaling. I don't sit in with like a specific thought of what I want to write about. I just go, oh, start writing. And then I end up somewhere where, like I didn't even start thinking about this. So for me, I think journaling is that way of doing it, which is really interesting, because sometimes like my journaling titles are like titles of songs. Then I end up writing about um, something I need to do tomorrow. So like it's very random, but it's just like a path that it takes. So I kind of relate to what you just said about letting the painting do the talking for you, which is cool. Um, I was just looking through your social media earlier before I came on, and a lot of it, a lot of it is, it has a green tinge to it, and I think so. So do your paintings. A lot of the times, I feel, at least the ones that I've seen, they do have some inspiration from the color green. Have you thought about that necessarily? Like, do you know? You haven't thought
Like,
about that.
yeah, I always thought that it was like pink or like bluish or something.
Hmm.
Okay, green.
Green.
That's
I mean,
interesting.
yeah, I guess the reason why that color sort of called out to me when I looked at your Instagram account, at least, is because a lot of the pictures had like, excuse me, a lot of the pictures had symbols of green and symbols of nature associated with them. So I'm going to transition into the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about, specifically about nature. Like, um, how do you connect to nature? Because I think a lot of the times, well, that wasn't a smooth transition, but oh well. um, how or because a lot of the times I feel like we are not necessarily connected to nature, and I personally feel like these past few months, I've been a lot more connected to nature than I usually have been. So, what is it for you that, or was there sort of like a moment that made you started to connect to nature, or was it just like a thing since childhood? Your parents or your family sort of got you into doing it. What's that like?
Okay, so this is gonna sound like really weird,
Go
but
for it.
okay. So the first time where like I truly felt like I was super connected with nature is when I started like learning more about like spirituality and
Mm-hmm.
like the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I went through a really bad breakup and I was super sad. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember just like, oh my gosh, like I was like in tears for like 8 months. I just felt like I wasn't myself. But like nature like was always the one that was like there. Like if I look up the sky, I'll be like, oh my gosh, this is like so nice. Like I wish I could just be like daydreaming all the time with like the
Mm-hmm.
clouds and all that. But I felt like a super strong sense of connectivity
Mm-hmm.
with like the universe and all that. Um, Sounds like so spiritual, but like,
No. I mean,
um,
I agree
yeah,
with you in a lot of ways. Yeah. Yeah. So for you, it was basically like a breaking or like a breakup that sort of was like that tipping point for you where you started connecting with nature, which is interesting. Yeah.
and
Because I
like
think
I would be,
go for
yeah.
it. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, it's okay. No, like, yeah, I would say that it's like at that point because it made me feel so good. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I loved like pictures of like trees and like mountains and like beaches, and like even just like by looking at them, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I want to be there one day. And that energy sort of like just like makes me feel connected to like a higher like source or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Just bouncing back into that section of art that we were talking about, do you feel like your connection with nature is expressed through your art?
Mm, I would say it's more of like I love nature so much that it I love nature so much. Um
Hey, it
oh
makes
my
sense.
god.
Sure, why not?
It's like it's like I love it so much that like it kind of like translate like a lot of like the elements of like nature comes out. So yeah.
So you would say a lot of it, like a lot of your connection to nature, sort of translates into
Mhm,
the art that you
mhm,
do. I mean, I also sort of noticed that in your pictures too. A lot of them had those green pinches. So I assumed that, like even when you're taking pictures, a lot of times there is that connection to nature, which is cool because I think this probably touches into a little bit of spirituality. I think we all have this connection with nature that we don't necessarily see, or not that we don't see, but then that we don't think about as much because we're like, oh, it's just part of life. I've had this ever since I've been born, So like, whatever. But I think there is a lot that the nature gives us, or that nature gives us rather, which just slips under the radar that you usually don't think about. But then when you start, like if you sit back and think about it, there's a lot of things that nature offers. Do you feel that way? And if so, like what are some things that nature offers to you specifically? Maybe on a metaphorical sense or in a physical sense. What is it? What does nature give you as a person?
That is such a deep question. I would say I would say like it's that sense of like like joy, like
Mm-hmm.
every time you see a flower, you're like, oh my gosh, it's a flower,
Yeah.
like yeah, it's like that sense of like joy and like or like when you're at the beach, you're like you just feel this sort of like happiness.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's what nature gives me. Um, I don't know if it's and also it's really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
So like uh yeah, and like if you're talking about like a physical sense, I collect a lot of stuff in nature. Like I'm the kind of person who like collects like feathers and like
Mm-hmm.
stones. Like
Yeah.
I could, I don't know if that's like sort of like what you're looking
No,
for.
I think it makes sense because a lot of the times, things like feathers or like leaves or certain plants, they are associated to nature, and if that's your physical way of sort of connecting with it, so be it. Because I mean, I know you're a bit of a plant mom, right? So is that one
Yeah.
way that you connect to nature physically?
Yes. And being a plant mom is so different than
Mm,
appreciating appreciating nature and like caring and like actually like growing it is so different. Like the
mm,
process is so different. With plants, oh my gosh, you have to like water it, make sure that it's in the right sunlight, and like you're almost like taking care of a child, you know?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah. So it's like it's such a different process and like it
Mm,
connects you in a very like different way too. Like yeah.
mm.
Instead of like appreciating it, you're actually like nurturing it, which is like a completely different experience.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, I'm not necessarily a person who likes to plant that much, but I do feel the sense of connection to nature in a lot of ways, through the air we breathe, or things like that. Um, and now I lost my train of thought. um, a lot of the times I've seen you go out and sort of like just bask in the sun or whatever. Is that your way of sort of seeking joy?
Yes, definitely. Oh my gosh. Um, I've I've heard like my friends tell me that they've like seen me like dance around in like the grass and everything, and it's so like embarrassing, but like yeah, that's like one of my ways of like connecting with it, and it brings me joy and it releases like stress also, but it also like helps me connect back to like myself. Like like I don't feel um I don't feel like that need to be like I don't know, like it just connects me back to like my childhood kind of like
Hmm.
connects me back to like my inner child, I guess. Yeah.
What aspect of your childhood or inner child would you say that it connects to?
Well, it's like that sense of like just like dancing because like as a child like I like to dance. I like to
Hmm.
like just be out there in the sun and just
Yeah,
like the vitamin
yeah, because
C,
like
D.
being carefree.
Yeah.
Yeah, because children are carefree. They're like in a sense souls that have no worry about the world, and I think
Yeah,
um,
it gives me like that sense of freedom that like normal like schoolwork and like work does to you, because like you always have to reply emails in a certain way, and then like you're always like stuck in a routine. Like if it's not laundry, it's your dishes. If it's not dishes, it's like something else that you have to do. So like for if it yeah for like yeah so if you're like basking in the sun and like you're like dancing around, like it just like helps you forget just for a little while.
mm, this is probably similar to the question that I asked about art. Um, do you find yourself usually sort of going out into the sun or going to a park or whatever when you're feeling low, or is it something that you do irrespective of which end of the spectrum you're on?
Mm. I would say that it's like, especially when I feel really low,
Mm,
like I have to like go out on a walk or like just sit outside look at the sky or
mm,
like yeah just bask in the sun, just to like refresh and like jumpstart my day, like jumpstart like okay I got this, let's do this, it gives me like that restart button. Yeah.
mm. Yeah, because I think a lot of the times, especially with nature or looking at the sky for that matter, whenever I look at the sky, I feel like, in a good way, not in a bad way necessarily, but in a good way, I feel like, oh, like I don't necessarily matter to this planet. And not in a bad way, but in a good way, it sort of reminds you of things that are not well, let me phrase that again. It reminds you of things that are higher than you are, and that you're not sort of the center of attraction. I mean, you are the center of your world for sure, but there's a higher sort of purpose. So there is a higher being that is out of our control. Is that how you feel with nature too?
Absolutely. It's like you feel like your problems are like less important, and you feel like you're just small, you know, like your problems, like they're not big, like you're the one who make it super big, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And just to have like that scale to like compare,
Yeah.
It's refreshing. It brings you back to like, okay, you know.
Yeah. Are there like any, I mean, you just mentioned that you usually find yourself going to a place to connect with nature when you're feeling low, but is there like, do you notice yourself performing a certain ritual with nature whenever you walk out of the house or whenever you're going somewhere? Is there something that you do?
Like what kind of ritual? Like
Okay, I can
like just
explain.
like walking around?
No, yeah, because for example, like whenever I walk out of the house, the first thing I do especially when the sun is out and there's no clouds blocking it, I sort of give thanks to the sun because that's where the brightness is. That's how all of this is running, as a planet, like as a machine. So that's something that I picked up from my father a lot. My mom does it too, but I picked up from my father. And recently, I was watching someone talk about it, and I was like, wow, yeah, like this is a way that I connect to nature in a lot of ways. So is there something that if you were to think back and like sort of
Okay.
visualize your activity around nature, is there
Yes.
something that you do that sort of like a
Yes.
ritual that's always part of how you connect?
Yes. Okay. So mine is like with the clouds. Like I
Mm-hmm.
like to look for like symbols and like pictures of like things in the cloud. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
be like, okay, universe, give me a sign. Like what can I see today? Like, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's kind of like my way of
yeah,
like connecting to.
yeah. No,
But
that's
it's
cool.
so nice.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. Like I should do that more often to like thank the sun and all that. Cause
Mm-hmm.
ooh, okay. So there's another thing too. Like when the wind blows,
Mm-hmm.
I like visualize like, okay, like all my worries are like being like blown out to the wind, and it's like the wind of like change, and I just like kind of let it like.
That is beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways that we can connect to nature to sort of let go of the worries that we have and to sort of remember that there's a higher being or there's a higher purpose. So there is something that keeps us alive, and that if it wasn't for nature, we probably wouldn't be doing this, or we probably wouldn't be breathing, we probably wouldn't be alive. Um, what is it for you about nature that you think keeps you there? Because sometimes a lot of the time, or that's sometimes there's a lot of moments where we can sort of forget about things like this. Um, so what is it about nature? And you've probably answered this while we talked about it, but I just wanted to know, do you notice yourself sort of not connecting with nature as much, or do you see yourself constantly being there, or what motivates either case?
Like what keeps me there?
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's like that happiness, like that like sense of like refreshment. Like
Mm-hmm.
I connect with the moon a lot too. Like I love like the moon, and like I'm into like astrology too. And so it's like I think that's like one of the main things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like nature,
Mm-hmm.
it always has like a sense of like spirituality into it.
Right.
Like always ties back into that. And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's there.
Mm. Yeah, because I mean, this is probably going to sound, I don't know, weird, but a lot of the times there are these sayings, I mean, I personally am a religious person, and a lot of the times there's a saying that we only go to God when we're sad or when something bad is happening. So that was sort of what I was trying to ask. I don't know if I worded that properly, but I was just wondering, like, do you feel like you only go to the nature when there's something negative? Or, I mean, you did mention that that's your sort of way of seeking joy, which is great, but do you see that happening a lot? Or I mean, there's nothing wrong with it because I think we all do it
Yeah.
in some way or the other, but I was just curious to know.
I feel like Yes, I feel like most of the time, like I would say like 80% of the time,
Yeah.
it's always like some sort of bad emotion, and then I always go back. But I would also say that like I like appreciating it too. Like I like going camping and all that,
Mm.
and like being in nature. I love that. I love like I collect a lot of like crystals,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's also like a part of like I don't know, like you like get to appreciate like the little stones that like the universe gives you and all that. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um,
Is there anything in, like, for example, you said feathers or stones. Do these things sort of symbolize different things, or are they just one thing, which is joy?
oh my gosh, yes. Like I would say it's like oh my gosh, I'm about to get so vulnerable. Oh my goodness. Okay. So like feathers and all that kind of stuff, like I see them as like signs from the universe that like everything is okay. Like if I have like this dream or like this um goal that I really want to reach and I feel like I'm going out of hand, um like if I see a feather on the floor, I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, the universe is affirming me. It is telling me that it's okay. And yeah, like things like that. Like I do that.
Because I think like numerology, like kind of like astrology, is also a thing where people, when they see a certain sequence of number in their lives, they're like, oh, this is maybe directing me in some way. Because I was listening to this podcast recently, and they were talking about how if it's 11:11 on the clock, it like symbolizes something, at least to them. So it's kind of interesting to see, like, there's a lot of different things around the world that we sort of use to signify as signs or as like sort of affirmations, if you will, which is really really interesting. And I think it's in a lot of ways we all want the same thing. We all want to be happy. You all want a
Yes.
sense of peace and calm, and the fact that these things can give us that is something that is great. And like, even if someone is just looking at stones and like is happy as they could ever be,
Exactly.
there's nothing wrong with it. It's just your way of seeking joy, which is great.
Yeah, I
So
would say
yeah.
yeah, I would say like it helps you like center yourself a little bit. Like whether it's like nature or art, like it helps me center. Like it helps me like come back to like my center.
Do you want to elaborate that? Like, what do you specifically mean by center?
So like a lot of times like I feel anxious and like I feel like I have all these like like doubts in my head and like you feel like out of balance,
Mm-hmm.
So like through like basking in the sun or like dancing and like just like art releasing sort of a lot of that like anxiety and all that kind of stuff, it helps me bring me back like a sense of like calm and like peace. And I would say like that is like the center. Like be like, okay, I'm clear now. Like I can move on my day with like a sense of like direction and like focus without having all those like thoughts just like swarming in your head. Yeah. So yeah.
It's very grounding. Like, it's very
Yeah,
grounding in a lot of ways.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, yeah, because I think we all have our different ways of being grounded and or feeling that sense of grounding. Um, how important do you think it is to like seek a certain way to be grounded? Because I think a lot of the times you're always flying in the air with these thoughts that we have, or whatever it is. So, why do you think, from your own perspective, um, that we as humans need to seek some sort of grounding? This is also probably like a spiritual question along with it, but yeah, what do you think? Like, why do
Yeah.
we seek grounding?
Um well, I would say that it's like you feel more at peace and you feel more calm and you feel more like connected like to your purpose, I guess. Because so much of the time like I feel like I'm like senselessly like oh my God, I can't say that word, senselessly like just scrolling on Instagram. And
Mm-hmm.
I hate that about myself. And you start like, comparing yourself to people, and that's like like it's not useful thought. So when you ground yourself and you come back to like yourself and not like comparing yourself to other people, you find that like, okay, I'm complete, I'm enough, and I can go through my day without feeling like I'm not enough, kind of thing. So like I feel like that's why centering is so important. It helps you remember like who you are, like back to your roots, which I'm still like trying to do like on a daily basis. Like, you know, like it's an ongoing thing, you know? So yeah.
Yeah, because I think, like you said, it's an ongoing thing. Because especially in the world that we live in right now, there's a lot of external stimuli that's constantly like being bombarded at you. So it's very hard to sort of seek that sort of grounding. If there's anything that you would think that you could, well, maybe eliminate from your life to sort of seek that grounding, or maybe if not eliminate, what do you think there's something? What do you think you could do maybe more of, maybe feel more grounded in a lot of ways? Because you said you still feel like it's an ongoing process.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. This is such a hard question.
Hey, I mean, you can answer as you feel,
I
whatever
really
the
have
first
to
thing that
think
comes to your
about it.
mind.
Okay, so I feel like number one really is like social media. I
Mm,
feel like I really have to cut that down. But even if I cut it down, because like through quarantine and like this whole period of time, I really tried to like distance myself from social media. I stopped like posting stuff. I stopped like looking at stuff on social media. But I still feel out of balance. Like I still feel like there's still something wrong. Like just doesn't feel right. So I
mm,
feel like it's not like you have to eliminate it, but you have to like find some sort of like balance with it, because you still kind of like seek connection with like your friends and like I don't know, like your interests and your hobbies and everything like on like through social media. And that's when you get like your inspiration, and like that's when you like explore new things and you know like look up and like you know like you see new quotes and you feel more inspired. So I feel like it's a balance, like you kind of have
mm.
to like balance it out. So that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I think balance is the key in a lot of things in life in general. I think be it diet, be it exercise, or be it grounding. I think we all seek that sense of balance, because if you, for example, if you overwork yourself through exercise, you're gonna feel tired. You're not gonna, your body's not gonna recover. And in the same way, I think like you said, there's no way of. I mean, because we are living in that age where, I mean, this is also going to go on to some form of social media, and this is a way of
Yeah.
expressing what we think on social media. So it's hard to sort of let that go, but at the same time, you sort of need to understand that there should be a certain distance, and that it can't be a part of, it can't define what you do, or that it can't define, it shouldn't define your emotions,
Mm-hmm.
for the
Yes.
lack of a better term.
Yes. That's
Um, yeah. Do you because there's a lot of negative there's a lot of negativity, of course, on social media. So going back to questions of art and nature, do you think that that is sort of a way of escape for you from these things, from that sense of negativity?
absolutely number one escape. Always. It's like, but then it's like after I create something, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to post it on social media. So it's like, you know, it's like, it's never ending. It's like a cycle. It's like you create, you put it back to social media inspires you, and then you go back to creating. It's like this whole cycle of like balance and like, I don't know, just like this circle of like, that has to happen. The circle of life.
It's a constant
Yeah.
loop, basically.
Yeah, constant loop. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because do you think that that circle or that constant loop can be broken? I'm just curious. What do you
Absolutely.
think?
'Cause I
Yeah.
feel like I don't know. Cause isn't it so like second nature for us that if we see something that we really like, immediately we're like, oh, I want to show this to other people. I want to take a picture of it, or like I want to share it on my account. Like I don't know about you. Is that what you feel?
Well, I'm not the kind of person that likes taking pictures of myself or taking pictures in general. So in that sense, I don't necessarily post as much on social media. I mean, I do share my thoughts, and things like that, like
Yeah. See, it's like
stories.
Yeah.
So there is that
Mm-hmm.
sort of outlet that I do use through social media. And whenever I think of something, I'm like, oh, this feels so profound in some way. I need to go and share it to people because, you're like, people should see this because, like, I think the other thing that's associated with that is we all sort of think that, hey, if this can help someone, that's awesome. Do you feel that way too, like with the things that you post about, be it your artwork or be it nature? Do you feel like there is that sense of giving where you're like, oh, I hope that someone who sees this might feel better out of it?
Like on my art page, like definitely,
Mm-hmm.
like it's like the reason why I created it is because I wanted people to feel a sense of like anything can happen. I want to give them like a sort of like magic, like that feeling of like possibility. Um, because when I created it, it's like I came out of like a really bad like just like mental state, and like I used this like page to like build myself up. I told myself, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I hope like it like inspires someone else, or like if someone else like sees my artwork, like they feel that sense of like aliveness, or like a sense of like energy. And that to me, it's like, okay, I've done my job. Like you don't have to buy my stuff. Like I just want you to like, I don't know, like it just like feel a sense of like, I don't know, wonder, inspiration, or like joy. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the main reason why.
It's interesting how you said you don't want people to buy your stuff, but the fact that you put it out gives you joy, which is really, because I was just thinking about that while you were saying that. Because initially, at least for me, when I started posting some random thoughts, a lot of people tended to like respond or they'd say something. But then there was a phase in between when it sort of dried up, like there weren't responses. So I sort of sat back and like I had to sort of self evaluate and be like, am I posting these just to sort of seek that gratification? Or am I doing this for myself? And once I sort of found that happy medium, I was able to sort of let go of that
Mm-hmm.
sense of people not responding. It's fine because, like, at the end of the day, people have their own lives. People are going through their own things. They have their own things to do, so you can't necessarily expect them to like respond to you or whatever. So, talking about that specifically, do you feel like there was a tipping point where you realized that in
Mm-hmm.
association to like posting your stuff?
Yes, absolutely. It's like at first I started off super strong. I'm like, okay, like this is all gonna be for me only. Like I just want to make myself happy. And then like throughout like the process of like actually like promoting the page, I started to get like scared and like anxious. I'm like, oh my gosh, like what did I create? I don't know if I can keep up with myself. And that was when I was like, okay, like why is no one liking my photos? What am I doing wrong? Should I be posting at this time or that time? Like what can I do to like help engage more like likes, or like get more likes, or like or where like people can like see more of my artwork, which is important. But like
Yeah.
at the same time, like you get like, just like a little bit like discouraged sometimes when like people like don't react to my stuff. So yeah, I do definitely feel that. I do definitely feel that. But I'm sort of like coming out of it too. Like there are times where I'm like, okay, remember, like this is for you. This is not for anyone else. Like you created this for yourself. Like so like connecting back to like the why really like helps you like really like helps you like clear away those thoughts and be like, okay, remember. And when you start like creating the post, like you don't care about whether people like it or not, you're just creating.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that is like the the place that I always want to be at, but it's hard to always be at that place. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes us human, right? Because we
Mm-hmm.
always have those sort of range of emotions, and it's not always possible to stay switched on in that sense, to be like, okay, I'm not going to be dependent on what people say. And also touching on that, this probably goes back to a bit of the spirituality thing that we sort of briefly touched upon when we were talking about in terms of spirituality. I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita, and it talks about the two sort of manifestations, if you will, one of them being material and the other one being spiritual. So, in a sense, do you feel like you not being reliant. I mean, again, like you said, it's something that we need. It's part of, like, for example, this podcast. I'd appreciate it if a lot more people saw it and et cetera, but it's not
Mhm.
necessarily going to determine how I feel. Do you feel like, or how important do you feel that is for you as a person?
I would feel, I don't know, I feel like it's not as important. Like sometimes, it sounds weird, but like sometimes when people do get super engaged with it, I sometimes freeze and I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. Like, oh my
Mm,
gosh, it's getting so much engagement, but like, I don't know what to do. Like, should I like bag? Do I follow the bag? Like, what do I do? Like, I get paralyzed, sort of. So
mm,
it's like kind of like weird. Like, you want it, but like when it comes to you, you're like, I don't know what to do with it.
yeah.
So, yeah. So, yeah. I would say that it's both important, like the engagement is important, but I wouldn't attach like my sense of like how my page is growing with that, you know.
Mm, mhm.
So
And I think that that's important to understand. And I think that is something associated with spirituality in a lot of ways, because you're seeking that inner joy. Um, so, speaking of spirituality, what are some things that you do? Like, is there certain things that you read or certain practices that you have that sort of connect you or make you a spiritual person?
oh my gosh, okay, so I read a lot of like new age and like new age books. I don't know if you're like familiar with like Eckhart Tolle. I think I
I've
told you this
heard
before. I
you've
think
you've
we
told me
briefly
this.
talked about.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay,
yes.
so like it's all about like finding your purpose and like um be aware of like your ego and all that kind of stuff. I love books like that. I've read, I think the book that really jump started this whole thing was actually, am I allowed to say this?
Go for it. I mean,
But
whatever you want to say, as long as you're not cussing, that's fine.
okay, okay. So Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. That is the
Mm,
book that really, really like, whoa, like just like opened up this like whole part of me that feels like, oh my god, you can take your creativity anywhere. And like she ties in like manifestation, like the universe, and also like creativity, and like she ties it into your life and how you can incorporate it in your life to make it more like magical and like more joyful. And so yeah, she talks about like creativity as a force and how it like helps you do things.
mm-hmm.
And when you lead with it, when you go with it, it takes you to like places where like you were meant to be, or like you always want to be. So yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that if you were to give recommendations of like a few books or a few things that people could do to sort of spiritually connect, if you will, for the lack of a better term, what would those things be?
Okay. Yes. Okay, so there are a couple of books. So number one, Big Magic by Elizabeth
Mm-hmm.
Gilbert. Absolutely amazing. If you feel like you have a creative endeavor that you're afraid to pursue, read that book. Oh my goodness. That book is amazing. Um, second book is You Are a Badass.
Nice.
You're a Badass by, yes, oh my gosh, I think you're gonna enjoy this book a lot. She's like super funny. She's really relatable, and she also ties into like the universe as like the source, and how you could like work with it and like manifest your dream life. So You Are a Badass. That is another book to check out. So yeah, those are the two books. But for like if you're into like more like advanced stuff, like you're like, oh my gosh, when you really, really get deep into it, Eckhart Tolle, A New Purpose, or wait, A New Earth. Yes, that is a good book too.
Mm. Did you? I mean, this is a random tangent, but talking of Eckhart Tolle, did you hear about like how he initially became spiritual? I think I remember someone talking about this in a podcast. They were like, it was that one like sort of moment that like sort of just turned him into that sort of spiritual seeking. I might be getting the details wrong, and I apologize if
Oh,
I am. But I feel like I remember someone talking about this on a podcast where they were like, "Oh, it was that one thing, that one inflection point gotten to connect to it a lot more. Because I think for a lot of us, it's very much a sort of continuous process. They sort of constantly seeking it. But in his example, someone was saying that it sort of happened like a one and done, and he was just flipped as a person.
Wow. Oh
Uh,
my God. I
yeah.
wish mine was like that.
Well, why do you think
Easier to
so?
just like sit to the side. I feel like because for me it's such a gradual process and you have to be very conscious about remembering to follow that journey, you know,
Mm,
because you get lazy and you like slip back and you're like, oh my gosh, I really don't want to do this. What is this? What ego? What? Like, I don't want to like deal with it. So yeah, like the fact that he was able to just like jump straight into it, like I wish I
mm,
had that.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I apologize for getting the details wrong, but I feel like I remember listening to this in there's this podcast that I listen to called the Charlie and Ben podcast. They talk about a lot of random stuff and they go very deep into some of these topics, like not necessarily spirituality, but a lot of different things. And they dissect it in many different ways. So if this is for the listeners and for you too, if you don't know about it already, check out the Charlie and Ben podcast. They put out pretty cool stuff too. Um, yeah. So in terms of spirituality, because a lot of the times people talk about, oh, like, meditation is a way of seeking spirituality, or going up in going to the mountains and sort of giving up on everything is a way of being spiritual.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot more granular than that. It's not just about sort of giving everything up and becoming a monk and going to the mountains. So what I mean, you did mention that you read some books to sort of channelize that sense of spirituality, but what do you think? Or okay, I'm trying to find the right way to phrase this, but what are some things that you do that you think are channelizing that spiritual energy within you?
Okay. Okay. So, okay, gonna get super vulnerable. So,
If you're not comfortable, that's totally fine, but whatever you want to share.
yeah, no, okay. So, I really like, I love astrology a
Mm,
lot. I feel like that is my main connection to spirituality. Um, that and also, um, yeah, like the books that I read and all that. Because I also got into spirituality after that really bad breakup. So I feel like it's a way of like really finding like a sense of like balance. Like
mm,
that is like where I always go back to. It's like my foundation. Like
mm,
yeah. And so the practices you're talking about, right? So yes, it's like astrology. So like I don't know if you know about this, like every single full moon and like every single new moon, there's always like a different zodiac sign behind it. So like
mm-hmm,
actually tomorrow this time is a
mm-hmm.
solar eclipse.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
yes,
Yeah. Well, probably not by
yeah.
the time
So
that this episode goes out, but the
yeah,
14th is going to be a sort of eclipse, basically.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the solar eclipse is in like I forgot what the zodiac sign it is in, but it's in a particular sign.
Mm-hmm.
So that sign basically influences that eclipse, and like eclipses and like new moons and like full moons, they all mean different things. So like eclipses are like transition periods, and so they're saying that we're transitioning from like an old way of being to like a new way of being, and that energy will be super potent around like tomorrow. And so
Mm.
hence we're doing this new thing today, so like we're transitioning.
Yeah,
So yeah, that
yeah.
helps me. Yeah, so yeah, it really like helps me like connect to like that sense of like spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
but it also connects me to like life and like my goals and like what I want to do. So it's
Right.
like a self-help thing too.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know why a part of me feels like a lot of the questions I've asked have been redundant, but I feel like a lot of these things you can only understand if you actually dig deep. Because on the
Yes.
surface level, it's very easy to say, oh, yeah, go read a book. But what is it about that book that sort of connects you to it? Or what is it about astrology? Or what is it about painting? Or what is it about like being artistic that sort of brings all of these things out? I feel like digging deep into that and having that conversation sort of helps understand things in a better way. That helps put things into perspective, which is why we have this podcast. Anyway,
So true.
so
Yes.
I'm sorry, say that again.
No, I just said like so true.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to transition into this segment that I'm going to try out since this is the pilot episode. The name is so random. It's called Bish Bash Bosh. And the reason why it's called that is because I watch a lot of soccer content on YouTube, and a lot of it is based out of the UK. And I remember watching this one person when he kicked the ball. He was like Bosh, and I was like, huh, okay. And you've heard like the words bash and all those kind of things. So it's like one random day, Bish Bash Bosh. Let's make something out of it. So
Let's make this
so yeah, so basically Bish Bash Bosh is a segment where I will give you 5 words,
okay.
and from those, so every word you'd have to respond to in either 3 words or in 3 phrases, which is why Bish Bash Bosh. Three, well, that was 4 but 3. So for example, if I was to say nature, what are the 3 words that come to your mind first? Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay, makes
3 words
sense.
or 3 phrases. So that nature is not the first word because we've already spoken about nature. I'm going to delve into some more abstract words, for the lack of a
Okay.
better term.
Oh
The
my
first term is differences. What are the 3 words that sort of pop up in your head when I say the word differences?
uniqueness, people, culture.
Uniqueness, people, and culture. That's
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Um, what about the word nuance or like gray?
Ooh. Okay. Space. Um, something new, and like a new way of being. Kind of being. The word
Mm-hmm.
being. Yes.
Cool.
Wait. Okay.
What about learning?
Growing. Studying.
Mm-hmm.
Books. This is so random.
Hey, no, it's all good. It's all good. That's what the segment is about. It's about
Okay.
being random and
Okay.
like sharing whatever like shoots into your head first. So it's all good. If it
Okay.
is studying, sure, like studying is one way of learning, of course. But I think
Yeah.
we're learning every single day. Like, I learned something about astrology and the eclipse tomorrow. So there's
Yes.
learning everywhere. So that's one of the reasons why I had that word up there. The next word, which is the 4th word, is empathy.
Ooh, understanding. Kindness. I don't know why, but like the picture of a girl keeps coming out. So like a girl.
Okay. Okay.
Person. Yeah.
Do you think
Yeah,
you
I
can
don't know why.
elaborate on that? Like, what is it about that girl that sort of associates it with the word empathy?
I would say that like my girlfriends are always like the ones who are like more empathetic to me. And so
The dudes
yeah,
are
I
not. No,
feel
I'm just
like
kidding.
that
Just kidding.
the dudes are sometimes they are, but
Sorry to interrupt you, but no, please go ahead.
no.
I'm sorry.
No, yeah, that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like
Cool.
when you tell people things and they give you empathy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the last word to sort of close off the first time that we're doing bish bash bosh. This feels so random and I feel kind of stupid when I'm saying it, but the word is similarities.
Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know why, but the word people also keeps coming up.
Okay.
People, like that that um that part of the Venn diagram.
Yeah, that sort of
middle part.
intersection, the intersection.
Yes, the intersection. Yes. Okay, intersection. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the intersection. And shared story.
Nice. I like
Sort
it.
of came to mind. Yeah.
I
Like
like it.
shared. Yeah.
I
Oh
like it.
my god. That
Yeah.
actually took a really nice turn.
Yeah.
Pretty.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
flashback is fun.
Right? Yeah. Like, honestly, I was like, okay, this, I think it'll sound all right. But then when I started saying it out loud right now, I was like, damn, you sound quite stupid. But hey, I think it's something that we're trying. It's the pilot episode, so
No, yes. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
experimenting.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna transition into the last two questions for this episode. So one of the questions that I have, so I have a couple of questions just to close out, because the other question that I had, we kind of already covered in terms of recommendations for people to connect to spirituality. But going to the first question, how do you think that you personally relate to someone who's not necessarily who might be opposite to you? Like, for example, if they're not necessarily spiritual, how do you think you would relate to that person who's not necessarily spiritual, or who's not necessarily artistic, or who's not necessarily connecting to nature? How do you think that you could relate to someone like that?
I feel like, well, there's a couple of different ways. Like, I always like to ask, like, what people like to listen to, because I'm like a huge music person. Like, I love like all kinds of like genres and all that. So it's like super interesting to like also like see what other people listen to, and like I love like just talking about music and relating to with other people with music. Yeah, I guess that's also like creativity. I don't know, but I like to like know like their background story. Like I like to like ask them about like, oh, like where you're from, like I want to know more about you, and like I want to know where you're from, like how you're like different, so that we can also find some kind of common ground. Like it's so weird, like learning other people's difference also brings you like back, also like connects you to someone else. So
yeah, because I think a lot of the times we sort of get so absorbed by the differences in other people that we forget that there's a lot of things that actually bind us together than we think. So, which is why I thought I should ask that question, because a lot of the times there's ways that we can relate to people. It's just that sometimes we need to tap into that because we're not aware, like we don't know, and we won't know until we talk about it. So, all right, I guess that's one of the ways of doing it, rather. So, the last question to close out this pilot episode is, if you could leave the listeners or the watchers, for that matter, with one positive thought or one positive saying, what would that be?
Okay. What you seek is seeking you.
Beautiful.
Repeat that after.
What you seek is seeking you.
Yes.
That is awesome. And I think that's a beautiful way to close out this first episode of Perspective Platoon. I almost forgot the name of the podcast. But, well, thank you so much, Sam, for joining me today. I really appreciate you wanting to be the guinea pig, for the lack of a better term.
You have no idea. I'm so honored to be part of like this new thing that you're creating, and I can't wait to see like where you're gonna take random relatability to. So
well, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for everybody who's listening and watching. Thank you for watching the first episode of Perspective Platoon with Prateek. Make sure to follow Samantha on her social media accounts and mention in the comments some of the things that you were able to relate to with aspects like nature, spirituality, seeking joy, art, and so on. Make sure to also follow Random Relatability on all social media platforms and like, share, and subscribe. Once again, thank you so much for joining us and joining in on the conversation. Stay safe, take care, and don't forget to keep your mind open to different perspectives. Because you never know, random relatability might just be around the corner.